Imagine having everything you could possibly need, like your groceries, your gym, your favorite coffee shop, maybe even your office, all within a 15-minute walk from your front door.
I mean, it sounds like the ultimate urban paradise, right?
Totally. It sounds amazing. But consider this. What if that ultimate convenience is actually, secretly trapping you in an invisible bubble?
Yeah, and that really challenges the way we've fundamentally been taught to look at cities, because usually we take this very top-down perspective.
Right, like looking at Google Maps.
Exactly.
Right.
We look at a map, we draw a neat little 1-mile radius around an apartment building, and we just assume that geometric circle represents the neighborhood.
Right, because a map will tell you that you live exactly 1 mile from, say, a sprawling park or a major supermarket. But that piece of paper, or, well, the screen on your phone, it totally fails to capture the actual friction of reality.
Yes, the friction. I like that word for it.
Yeah, because it can't tell you if crossing that 1 mile involves this lovely shaded stroll past storefronts, or if you're, like, dodging 6 lanes of angry high-speed traffic just to buy a carton of milk.
You might be geometrically close in both scenarios, but you are absolutely not equally connected to those places.
Exactly. And that gap, the gap between the city drawn on a map and the city actually experienced by the people living in it, that's the focus of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We are exploring the concept of the invisible city.
Which is such a fascinating area of study right now, because for decades, urban planning relied really heavily on those static maps and, intermittent census data that gets outdated so fast.
Right. But recent academic research is shifting entirely, right? They're using these massive dynamic data sets to measure the actual lived experience of our neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's incredible what they can track now. We have 3 papers today that analyze GPS pings from 40 million mobile phones, visual street surveys from 45 different nationalities, and this ridiculously meticulous inventory of over 23,000 parks worldwide.
Just a massive scale of data. I mean, let's start with how we actually move through these spaces, because the first paper models urban mobility as a, wait, let me get the phrase right, a temporal bipartite network.
Which sounds incredibly dense and academic.
Yeah, very much so. But instead of just looking at static infrastructure, this model basically looks at 2 distinct variables, right? The physical locations and the real people moving between them over time.
Exactly. It's mapping the actual desire paths of urban life. It's tracking a living web of, where people go, when they go, and who they actually overlap with at those destinations.
And the temporal aspect is so critical there, right?
Yeah.
Because a coffee shop isn't just a point on a map.
No, not at all. It's a completely different social environment at 8:04 a.m. on a Tuesday when it's just packed with stressed commuters than it is at, 3:00 p.m. on a Sunday.
Right. Totally different vibe.
Yeah.
So by tracking anonymous mobile pings across 40 million devices in the U.S., these researchers weren't just looking at trip duration, they were looking at the density of interaction.
Right. They mapped routine paths to see how different demographic groups utilize shared amenities. And this data severely complicates the current absolute darling of urban planning, the 15-minute city.
Oh man, the 15-minute city model is everywhere right now. I feel like every city planner is talking about it. The core philosophy is reducing car dependency by making daily life hyperlocal, right?
Yeah, that's the pitch. Zoning laws get adjusted to mix residential and commercial spaces, so you don't have to commute across town to buy groceries or see a dentist.
And on paper, it seems like the ultimate community builder. Like if I'm always shopping locally and just walking the same few blocks, I'm theoretically bumping into my neighbors more often, supporting local businesses and, building this really cohesive, tightly knit community.
Right, and the environmental benefits are totally undeniable. I mean, emissions drop, traffic congestion plummets when trip lengths are reduced. But
there's always a but with these things.
There really is. The mobile data reveals a massive socioeconomic blind spot in that hyperlocal model. When you remove the necessity to travel across the city, you drastically reduce what researchers call intensive mobility.
Intensive mobility. So basically going out of your way.
Essentially, yeah. Cities have historically functioned as massive engines of social mixing precisely because people are forced to leave their enclaves.
Okay. So if a wealthy neighborhood has all its artisanal boutiques, offices, and organic grocers within a 15-minute walk,
those residents never actually have a reason to leave. Exactly. They become isolated in this fortress of convenience.
Wow. A fortress of convenience. I love that phrasing, but it's kind of terrifying.
It is. And the inverse is true for lower income neighborhoods. If they are confined to their own 15-minute bubbles, they are cut off from the broader economic and, well, social opportunities of the wider city.
So the data actually shows that while mixed zoning keeps people closer at home, it strongly correlates with exacerbated socioeconomic segregation.
Yes, the data is very clear on that. People no longer experience the serendipity of, like, the crosstown train or that central civic plaza where they are shoulder to shoulder with someone from a completely different walk of life.
The daily overlap just vanishes.
It vanishes.
Wow. So you trade a cohesive, mixed society for, like, shorter grocery runs. It's a heavy trade-off. It really highlights that a city is essentially a living system built on movement. If you change the circulation...
They change the entire organism.
Exactly. And we can actually see how deeply ingrained that circulation is by looking at what happens when the system is under extreme stress, right? The researchers analyzed Houston's mobile data during the 2021 tropical storm Imelda.
Right, a massive exogenous shock.
Yeah, and I would just assume that during a massive flood or hurricane, that temporal bipartite network just shrinks. Like people lock down, they shelter in place, and the network effectively just hits pause.
That's what you would intuitively think, right? But the data points in a completely different direction. During the flooding, the rigid, predictable routines of daily life completely dissolved, but movement didn't stop.
It didn't.
No, it became far more randomized. Citizens spontaneously adapted. They radically rewired their movement patterns to navigate the crisis, bypass flooded zones, find emergency resources, check on relatives.
Oh, wow. So the network didn't pause at all. It just reconfigured itself on the fly.
Exactly. The invisible city isn't just this static web. It's a responsive nervous system.
That's fascinating. The residents collectively rerouted the city's flow based on immediate environmental feedback, just bypassing the official grid entirely.
And it perfectly proves why static maps fail us. Our physical movement and our adaptability are what dictate the true shape of the city.
Okay, so if our daily movement determines the level of social mixing we experience, we really have to look closely at the actual destinations we are traveling to within these localized bubbles. And parks are a perfect example for this. Because if the goal is a walkable, healthy neighborhood, the quality of the local park matters immensely.
Right. Parks are often described as the lungs of a city, providing both environmental and social relief. But the data shows those lungs are not functioning equally across different geographies.
I feel like there's this really pervasive assumption about urban versus suburban living when it comes to nature. The common wisdom is that if you want genuine access to the outdoors, fresh air, lush green space,
you leave the dense city center and head to the suburbs.
Exactly. Downtown parks are always stereotyped as just, a concrete plaza with a fountain and some sad pigeons, whereas suburbs have the vast, quote-unquote, real parks.
Right, the sprawling fields. Well, to test the validity of that assumption, this massive global study audited 23,477 parks across 35 cities worldwide.
That is a staggering number of parks to audit.
It really is. But here's the cool part. They didn't rely on satellite imagery to just calculate the square footage of green pixels on a map. They actually utilized OpenStreetMap tags.
Which is a crowdsourced, incredibly granular mapping system, right? Like, volunteers aren't just drawing a green polygon and labeling it park.
Exactly. They are dropping specific data pins for individual benches, basketball courts, playgrounds, drinking fountains, unpaved walking trails.
Basically everything inside the park.
Everything. So by analyzing those specific infrastructural tags, the researchers could score each park based on the actual health-promoting activities it supports.
And they broke it down into 5 categories, right? Physical activity, nature appreciation, environmental benefits, social interaction, and cultural activity.
Yes, those 5.
I read they actually wanted to include a 6th category for mindfulness, like evaluating parks for their restorative, quiet, zen-like quality.
Oh yeah, they totally tried to do that. But they had to abandon it.
Because you can't measure zen.
Pretty much. There are no data tags on OpenStreetMap that can reliably quantify a peaceful vibe. I guess the digital world just hasn't found a way to measure tranquility yet.
That makes sense. But based on the 5 categories they could measure, the findings completely dismantle that assumption that suburban parks offer a better nature experience, right?
Completely dismantle it, because the data showed that parks near dense city centers are significantly better equipped for health-promoting activities, including, surprisingly, nature appreciation, than parks out in the suburbs.
Wait, really? Better for nature appreciation in the dense city?
Yes. because suburban parks often suffer from what we might call the green desert effect.
The green desert effect. I like that.
Yeah, they have a tremendous amount of sheer acreage and grass, but they severely lack intentional design.
Oh, I see. A massive empty lawn serves as a visual buffer, or maybe a place to throw a frisbee, but it doesn't actually support sustained social or cultural interaction.
Exactly. Whereas city center parks, because space is at such a premium, are densely packed with layered infrastructure. You get botanical gardens, designed water features, shaded seating arrangements that actually force social congregation.
Because you can't socialize if there's nowhere to sit.
Right. A sprawling suburban field might look totally green on a map, but if it doesn't have shaded benches, walking paths, or, cultural focal points, its actual utility to the residents is incredibly low.
The map promises nature, but the reality delivers an empty void.
And this creates a severe geographic inequity. A resident living on the outer edges of a city might have a larger yard, but they often have far less access to functional, health-promoting public spaces than someone living in a dense, concrete-heavy downtown area.
That is so counterintuitive, but it makes total sense when you think about the infrastructure. And beyond just the urban-suburban divide, the OpenStreetMap data also revealed a really striking cultural divergence in how different regions actually design their public spaces.
Oh, yeah. The contrast between North America and Europe is absolutely fascinating.
Let's talk about that, because North American parks scored disproportionately high on physical activity indicators.
Heavily skewed. The infrastructure in the U.S. and Canada is really focused on making people sweat.
Right. Baseball diamonds, tennis courts, running tracks, massive open sports fields.
Yeah, it reflects a very specific post-war urban planning philosophy. In North America, the park was heavily institutionalized as a place for youth sports and active recreation. It's a destination for exertion.
Right. You go there to do something active. But compare that to European parks, which score significantly higher on nature appreciation and social spaces.
Because the architectural history there is rooted in centuries-old plazas, royal gardens, promenades, the European park is designed as a place to simply exist.
To just sit, to gather, to take a slow walk under a tree canopy.
Exactly. It represents a completely different cultural understanding of what a public green space owes to its citizens.
And the researchers also created an equity index, didn't they? To see how fairly these different park philosophies are distributed across cities.
They did, and the global disparities are massive. Like, Tokyo and Paris rank incredibly high for equitable distribution.
Meaning everyone gets a good park.
Pretty much. In those cities, regardless of your neighborhood's income bracket, you have relatively equal access to highly functional, well-equipped parks.
But then you look at cities like Copenhagen or Rio de Janeiro, and the distribution is highly polarized.
Very polarized. A wealthy neighborhood might feature this world-class, multifunctional park, while a lower-income neighborhood just a few miles away has virtually zero functional park infrastructure.
It just really reinforces the reality that urban infrastructure doesn't just passively exist, It actively bridges societal inequalities or drastically deepens them.
Exactly. It's an active participant in city life.
Okay, so we have these localized bubbles, and we know the amenities inside them, like parks, vary wildly in their actual usefulness.
Yeah.
But to utilize any of this, you have to leave your house and navigate the streets connecting point A to point B.
Right, the journey itself.
Right. And a street that looks highly efficient on a planner's map can feel entirely different depending on the psychology of the person walking down it.
And this is where we introduce the SPECS dataset.
SPECS, which
Right.
stands for Street Perception Evaluation, considering socioeconomics, right?
You got it. Researchers really wanted to quantify the psychological layer of the city, so they showed street-level imagery to 1,000 people representing 45 different nationalities.
So the goal was to have a massive diversity of lived experiences looking at the exact same physical spaces.
Exactly. The participants evaluated the streets on specific indicators, like did the street feel safe, lively, wealthy, beautiful, boring, depressing.
It's a lot of variables.
It is. They also evaluated functionality, asking if they would feel comfortable walking or cycling there. The methodology was designed to measure how a person's age, gender, income, race, and personality traits actively filter their visual perception of urban geometry.
And the findings really just confirm what seems intuitively obvious to, well, anyone living in a city, but is rarely accounted for in urban design, right?
Yeah.
That two people can stand on the exact same corner and experience two entirely different realities.
Yes. For example, a wide, empty street with high walls might feel really peaceful and quiet to one demographic.
But feel incredibly isolated and dangerous to someone who feels vulnerable and realizes there is, like, no line of sight or escape route.
Precisely. Human perception is inherently localized and deeply tied to identity. But the real warning sign in this study emerged when the researchers compared these nuanced human responses to machine learning models.
Ah, AI enters the chat.
It always does, right?
Yeah.
City planning departments globally are increasingly utilizing AI to analyze street view data and assess neighborhood quality.
Because it is infinitely cheaper and faster
Hmm.
than, manually surveying 1,000 human residents.
Exactly. But the problem with AI in this context is the training data. If an algorithm is trained on massive global data sets to determine what a beautiful or safe street looks like, it operates by averaging out the entire world.
It creates a statistical mean human perspective that doesn't actually exist in reality.
Right. The AI relies on visual pixel segmentation. It scans an image and it just counts the number of pixels representing trees, pavement, sky, and buildings.
Okay, so globally, a high density of tree pixels and wide, orderly roads usually correlates with wealth, right? So the AI scores that street as safe and beautiful.
Yes, but it systematically ignores local context.
So the AI might scan a highly wooded street with no streetlights in a neighborhood struggling with crime, and it scores it a 5-star rating for green and beautiful.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, a local resident walking there at night doesn't see nature. They see hiding spots and a total lack of safety infrastructure.
Yes. The AI is entirely blind to the lived experience of vulnerability. The researchers found that AI consistently overestimates positive indicators and severely underestimates negative ones compared to real human responses.
That is wild.
And it goes the other way, too. An AI might scan a bustling, noisy market street in a developing nation and score it as chaotic and depressing just because it lacks orderly, painted lanes.
Yet the local residents probably rate it as lively and highly safe because there are hundreds of eyes on the street providing communal security.
Exactly. The community is the safety, not the painted lines.
The implication for the future of urban design here is genuinely concerning. If city planners rely on these off-the-shelf algorithms to allocate budgets, they might pour millions of dollars into engineering a street that the computer insists is optimal.
But the actual diverse residents of that neighborhood will experience the space as alienating, inaccessible, or hostile.
Because you cannot quantify the vibe of a neighborhood by stripping away the demographics of the people who actually have to live there.
No, you can't. An average street perception belongs to nobody. It literally erases the localized friction we talked about at the very beginning.
Right. By ignoring how a senior citizen perceives a busy intersection differently than a 20-something, the algorithm amplifies blind spots rather than solving them.
It really does. And I think synthesizing all three of these studies completely rewrites how we should interact with our environment.
Totally. Because the core theme here is that proximity does not equal accessibility.
Right.
Just because a grocery store is geometrically close to you within a 15-minute radius doesn't mean your neighborhood is socially integrated.
And just because a park has a massive footprint on a map doesn't mean it's actually equipped to serve your well-being.
And just because a street is technically walkable doesn't mean it feels safe to the person walking it.
The invisible city is defined by friction, human interaction, and deeply personal psychology. The map is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
The reality is the lived experience occurring on the ground, which is constantly shifting based on who is moving, what they need, and how they perceive the world around them.
We really spend so much of our lives navigating this psychological geography without even realizing it. We accept the physical environment as a fixed reality, rather than a series of choices that secretly direct our behavior, our social circles, and our stress levels.
Well, once you understand that this invisible layer exists, you start to see the mechanics behind your own daily routines. You begin to question why you take a certain route or why a specific public square makes you feel energized while another makes you feel anxious.
Exactly. And we want to challenge you to view your own neighborhood through this lens today. Next time you step outside your front door, don't just look at what is nearby. Notice what actually feels reachable.
Pay attention to the people you pass on the sidewalk.
Are you participating in a vibrant, mixing community? Or are you just moving through a highly convenient, isolated bubble? Look at the layout of your local park. Who is that space actually inviting to sit down, and who is it quietly excluding? The invisible city is all around you, directing your day, You just have to know how to look for it.